friends, welcome to episode 190 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
You know, as per usual, it is the holiday season, and that means various levels of stress and disorganization, but honestly, I think we were able to pull through tonight, so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Happy Yule.
Happy Yule to you. Happy Solstice for those else out there as
Merry
well.
Merry Christmas. We're a couple days into Hanukkah at this point.
Kwanzaa?
So
Kwanzaa hits soon?
I don't know where Kwanzaa sits, I'll be dead honest with you.
For some reason in the back of my head, I think it's before. Well, I'm sure we'll get corrected out of chat. Yeah, lots going on, but not Orthodox Christmas. That's next month.
Right on.
or slightly thereafter. I always get that mixed up. I know it's after Christmas in the January-February time frame.
Too many to keep track of.
Yes. And the shift of the new year for other groups and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's always interesting, but we are eventless. It has been life events, but no gaming right now. We're just kind of...
Yeah, everybody's kind of on holiday break right now.
No, I think it's a good thing.
Even our Tuesday night Stardew Valley games with a couple of my buddies are kind of on hold for the holiday stress and hubbub and stuff like that for right now. So.
Yeah, and we've got a snowstorm hitting tomorrow for us, so that's going to lock people down a little bit more.
Goody gumdrops.
But it's Michigan, so it may not even happen.
Right. You never know. It's a roll of the dice.
You never know. Yeah, so exactly.
Absolutely a roll of the dice.
But, it's been kind of nice in that sense. That gives us a little bit of a break, but at the same time ramps us up for all of this holiday hoobaloo.
A little bit of breathing room.
Yeah.
I'm glad for it because I got... I pushed myself so hard to have so much stuff ready for my last game, and then we only got through half the plot that I got written.
Sometimes it's a beautiful thing.
Which is great, because that means I get to just use the other half of it. Flush it out a little bit more than it was, because it was a little bit rushed, and I get to put together all that terrain that I was planning on getting done.
Yeah. I kind of did the same thing with mine, where I had everything prepared to go in multiple directions, including a special guest NPC, or at least voice for the NPC. And then you guys did about half of it, which I kind of expected one half was going to get done at some level. And so there's still plenty of space to go, but it gave me time to kind of get perspective and decide how I'm going to move into the next part and what level of energy I need to take with it and let you guys roll.
Yeah.
Yep. So, because it's perspective is good. Sometimes having a 2-part session or a 3-part session gives you time to reflect and reassess and go, I'm not necessarily going to retcon, but I'm going to retcon some of my ideas and talk to myself through it.
Yeah. You have the ability to kind of like step back, look at what you had written, and kind of go like, okay, I saw how last game session went. It's not going to really follow that same trajectory, so let me refocus.
Well, not only that, but like I know one of the things I failed to do in my last session, and it took me a little time to like see it myself, and that was at one point I had a player who was asking really good questions and trying to come up with a positive way to do discovery, and I kind of nixed it. And I didn't realize I was doing it until later, that it was a secondhand thing that I was doing. And I came back, I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done it that way. It wouldn't have made a difference.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't change anything. I was kind of just being obstinate in my head and direction, and I needed to just completely change that mind frame.
Just get back to being a fan of your player.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I was lost in a moment when I did it, and I was like, okay, well, I've seen it. I can accept that. I can make a note and sticky note it on the inside of my screen, because I think that is the other good thing for DM screens. It's not for hiding things. It's for reminding you of things.
Oh, yeah. They're not walls. They're post boards.
Correct. Mine is going to be like, oh, yeah, there's notes in there of like, okay, this is how this thing runs in 5th edition if you can't freaking remember it, or whatever. But having the ability to just have a post-it that says, like, listen to your damn players and let them do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the main reasons I upgraded from my tablet to this laptop is because I wanted a full keyboard. I wanted to be able to just have all of that laid out for me that I could.
No, and I think that's a huge thing to remind ourselves, is that it's okay to make failings, but it's better to make notes and say, it is far better to have a note that says, let your players enjoy the game, than it is to have a note that says, decrease the CR rating of this monster.
Yeah.
like that note is okay, but that doesn't actually give you any true information because that is going to be flexible. It's
Right.
mechanical, and it's never gonna. There's no perfection there, but perfecting yourself is much better.
Yeah, that's actually kind of how the same way we ended up with the current arc in my game too was I had a player who was trying to dig into some information that I dropped out there on purpose for their character, and they just followed up on it harder than I thought they were going to.
Yep.
And like in retrospect, I don't know why I didn't think they were going to follow up on it that hard.
Yeah.
I dropped a bunch of plot in their lap. Of course they were going to follow up on it, But I did it in the middle of somebody else's plot, and I was like, oh, I don't have time to deal with you right now, which was just a bad response for me. And so I, reassessed that, and I was like, all right, I am going to retcon just a little bit of the information. It doesn't change any of the events, but the information you got out of talking to this NPC is different, and we're just going to take it from there. And I'm going to give you the plot that you were digging for, because clearly you were digging for it and you wanted to find it.
And this is kind of the therapy session of
sure.
being a DM, is you have to be able to objectively look at what your players have said and be the therapist for yourself and say, okay, well, your players said they didn't enjoy this part. What were they really saying? Well, they suck. No, they don't suck.
No.
What were they saying? Like, that my plot sucked. That's not what they said either.
No, that's the brain goblins again.
Right. So you just have to take that moment and say, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I adjust from this? And it helps. It helps to be able to take that moment. And the more you do it, and the more you recognize that you need to do it, the better you're going to be. Yeah.
So. And I think it's really good that we for listeners too, for us to have this discussion here on during the show, even just for short, sort of as one of the other podcasts I listen to calls it, the preamble ramble.
Yeah.
Where it's not really our topic, but just shoot the crap for a little bit before we get into the roll up our sleeves. But it's good to hear that because, even though we do kind of present ourselves as the experts on this podcast, as the hosts.
Oh, hell no.
We're absolutely fallible.
Oh,
Every
completely.
single game session is a learning session for us. We are still learning. We are still creating new practices, finding new things out. And, so I guess my point is, don't ever kick yourself. We've been doing this for 25 years.
Yeah.
And it's still a learning experience every single game for us.
Oh, God, yeah, we're still idiots at times.
Yeah.
We're still idiots. We still fail. We still fall back on old things. We still have stress that pushes there. Our primitive DM brains still kick in, and we do stupid things, and we ape out in front of our players. It happens.
It's just monkey brain. Something happens you don't like, you hit it with a rock.
Exactly.
And scream at it.
You say no, and you bang your players with dice, and something, comes out of it.
And then later you're like, oh, no, that was bad.
That did not work out like it was intended.
Yep.
So
we do have a topic, though.
We do have a topic, and that topic is not for the storyteller.
Not for the storyteller. Storytellers, you can shut the podcast off and walk away now.
On the other hand, if you're a player, stay on. This is important. We've done this before. We've actually talked directly to the players before on a very similar topic.
It's a bit of a similar topic.
But I think this needs to come back around regularly.
Yeah, I mean, it was a similar topic. I think, like you said, it was a little bit of a different tone. Last time around, it was a little bit of a rant of, players, we have a bone to pick with you.
Yeah.
Some of the things we're going to say tonight maybe will sound familiar if you remember that particular episode. But we wanted to talk about how to set your storyteller up for success. And this is more of a constructive argument in that we want to let you know what you can do to make the game better for everyone and make it easier on your storyteller.
Yeah, and we know that there's a lot of storytellers out there who are full-time storytellers. They don't get to play. And keeping these things in mind as a player, whether it's a brand new game that you're just going to and you've never really gamed with that storyteller, or this storyteller has been literally telling you stories for the last 10 years of your life, all of these things still apply, and you will see where you fall under these categories, because I assure you, everyone does.
Yep.
I don't care if you've been a DM and now you're a player, you fall in this category and you know it. So there are 4 jobs that a storyteller has when they sit at a table. There's obviously the storyteller, the DM, the GM, whatever the game suggests that the tone and naming should be, which constitutes its own rights and things. There's the teacher.
Yep.
Which comes out as many people know, teaching the game not only in a mechanical sense, but kind of in a feeling sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you've got your babysitter. Dear God, we'll get into the details of that, but you should all know that your storyteller is a babysitter.
Cat herder.
Yeah.
Mom or dad.
Wrangler.
Friend. Yeah.
However you want to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the event coordinator, which is kind of the most painful at times.
Yeah.
Like, above everything else, that has got to be the most painful, especially in the culture that gaming is. It makes it challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So it can feel very exhausting to wear all those hats.
It's super exhausting. And honestly, like, it's one of the big things that I think drives people away from wanting to storytell, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Is that I think the perception at a lot of tables, especially to newer players who don't really understand the culture of gaming and stuff like that and haven't been doing it as long as a lot of us have, they'll sit down at a table and they see the role of the player is very passive.
It's like a moviegoer.
Yeah, your job is to show up and essentially spectate and roll some dice when you're called upon.
Right.
You know, and then you go home at the end of the night having received this story that somebody else put a lot of time, work, and energy into.
Yeah.
It really is exhausting, you know, having that sort of one-sided participation, and it can kill the enthusiasm for a lot of new storytellers.
Oh yeah.
And so the goal of tonight's discussion is to explain this sort of disparity to the players, but also to make some suggestions of things that you can do to help lighten the storyteller's load, to share things. Because you may actually just be showing up, and I don't want to ascribe malice,
no,
you know,
not
to
in the
anybody.
least.
Like, this is most of the time, this is just the word is ignorance, but I know that word has a negative connotation. I mean it by its dictionary definition, and that is simply not knowing. There's no shame in not knowing. There's a very simple cure for not knowing. Education.
That's right. Get in the know.
You're here. You're listening to this podcast. You are educating yourself on the topic. Congratulations. You have taken step 1.
Congrats.
Okay.
Yes.
And so most of the time players just do this out of ignorance, in that it is they don't know what they can do to help the storyteller. They think just showing up is the job that they're supposed to do, and the rest of that's out of their control.
Yeah.
You know?
The cultural colloquialisms of gaming, of being a player, are not taught.
Yeah.
They are experienced and discovered.
Yes.
When they really need to be taught.
Yeah. And even if you're a fan of like Let's Plays like Critical Role and stuff like that, a lot of the stuff isn't explicitly talked about. You will see some of the things we are going to talk about tonight happen at, say, Critical Role's table.
Yeah.
But you're not going to... No one will ever look you in the eye and go, like, you see what Liam O'Brien just did right there? That's the thing.
I would love to see honest, compassionate PSAs from them.
Yeah.
I think that I would love to see community like Brendan Lee Mulligan and some of the other groups do formal PSAs of how to be a compassionate, honest role player. I think that would...
Brendan Lee Mulligan might have an Adventuring Academy episode like that.
Sure,
I'll have to look into it. I'll see if I can post it up on our Discord if
but,
they do.
But I would love to get, like, because, I mean, he is by rote a comedian, a comedic writer.
Sure.
And PSAs tend to be kind of comedic, but the truth of the matter is you can't just throw comedy shade at, you know, bringing piles of food for your DM. Okay, that's a thoughtful thing, but the truth is that it's about taking care of everyone, you know, kind of a thing. So it could be very easily made into comedy, and I'd much rather see it as honest.
Brennan ranting about bringing food for your DM. I see you've read further down in my notes.
Just a bit. I actually remembered that piece. It was pretty funny.
It was pretty funny.
So, all right, let's start with teacher.
Yes,
I think it's the easiest one. We can kind of understand it at a gross level, but maybe not at how the player can help, other than get good.
Right. So just to expand upon the teacher role just a little bit, for those of you who have story told a little bit, have you noticed that oftentimes you are the only person who reads the book, and you spend half of your time telling the story and the other half explaining the rules to your players?
Yeah.
For multiple game sessions?
Well, because they only do it once a week or once a month.
Whereas you have to study everything and you have to know everything to be able to adjudicate stuff on the fly. And that's understandable. That sort of a disparity is understandable. But I have seen far too many players have not even picked up the book for the game that they have been involved with for upwards of a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Or looked up quick sheets.
Or just jotted down a note or two about how their own abilities work. You know, things like that. So the first piece of advice that we will, as tactfully as possible, extend to you, the players. RTFM.
Read
the manual.
There's another word in there. I think you can figure it out.
RTFM.
Yeah,
Read the manual.
Know the rules. Just know the flow of your character at the very least.
Yes.
No matter what the system is, most systems have of any variety have flowcharts to help you with just the process. So you could probably get it on a sheet or two, but most of all, know your character's abilities.
And that too acts in and of itself a limiting factor for you. You know, I know a lot of players, like Storytellers, we look at a book. We look at a 300-page book, because we do this literally once a month.
Yeah.
We'll look at a 300-page book and go, oh, this is good. Oh, I want to read more of this. Oh, I'm having fun devouring every page of this. Most players don't have that drive.
No,
they've got a lot of other stuff on their plate.
Yeah.
And that's why they're the players, not the storytellers, you know?
Yeah.
And I get that. Like, we absolutely understand that dichotomy there. But, so I understand from a player standpoint, you're going to look at a 300-page book and you're going to go, oh, that's homework, you know? I don't want to read all that. And the good news is you don't have to.
In most cases, yeah.
You don't need to know every single rule like the back of your hand like the storyteller does. But things like how the basics of the most common activities work, okay? So if you're playing Savage Worlds, you know that your target number is always 4. You know that you roll the dice that is written next to your trait, and you always roll the wild die if you're playing a wild card, which you should be. Okay? These are basic mechanics. If you're playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, you know how advantage and disadvantage works. You know what number to roll for initiative. You know how skill checks works, and you know how to roll attack rolls with both your weapons and your spells. Because these are things that are going to happen all the time, right?
Yeah.
But beyond that, like beyond the common, you know, everybody knows how to roll saving throws sort of things, you don't need to know how a wizard works if you're playing a monk.
No.
I mean, it's helpful.
You know it in a narrative sense.
You know it
that
in a
guy
narrative
could throw
sense.
a fireball, and that would hurt. That's all you need to know.
Exactly. All you need to know is your monk abilities or your wizard abilities, or just the know your edges, know your gear, know your feats, or you know whatever your game system calls the abilities that are allowed to your character. Just know your own character sheet.
Yeah.
So that you can competently interact with the world. And I would say you're going to have more fun if you do this.
Yeah, and in things like Powered by the Apocalypse, where your character sheet explains to you what your approaches are, what your natural abilities are, how to communicate through the narrative what you're doing, leans it into your character. So studying those things to understand how you go into an approach and how you decide to lash out, which are terms that they use. These are things that you need to know in a narrative sense. Games with simpler mechanics don't mean that you don't have to know anything coming to the table. It means you need to know less.
Yeah.
And you can get involved quicker. And as a player, I will say this for the teacher section. One of the ways that you could help your storyteller is by saying, this system may be too involved for the kind of story that I'd like to be involved with. Do we have something that's maybe rules lighter?
Sure.
That's 100% legitimate to ask. Your DM may be set on playing a specific system because that's what they're comfortable with, but suggesting a system that is a little rules lighter, like moving from D&D to Dungeon World, or to Savage World, or to any number of lighter systems, because you're much more you're encouraged as a player because you are there for the narrative, great. Make a suggestion. Do a little research. Your DM will appreciate it at multiple levels, and DMs listen because you're not the only one at the table.
Yeah.
In that sense. Yeah. Because it takes the burden off of them. Mm-hmm. And by removing one more thing off that camel's back, they don't break as easily.
Exactly.
So.
All right. The babysitter role. The parent role. The caretaker role. Wasn't really sure what to call this one. Babysitter might be a little bit harsh, but
let's work through this term, because what we're saying is, much like the babysitter, they're the ones providing the snacks and making sure everyone is taking care of themselves and maintained, and that the vibe at the table is okay. No one's crying. Everybody's there for the quiet time. We're all focused on the story.
Have you eaten? Did you sleep well? How's your headache? You know, all this stuff. And a lot of times, and I don't know if, again, this is, I think, another one of those things, I don't know if many players realize that they do it. Mm-hmm. But when they show up at the table, some players will place that baggage on their storyteller.
Or on the table as a whole.
And just be like, oh, I showed up, I didn't eat anything.
Yeah.
Y'all got any snacks?
Or they won't even ask for the snacks. They'll make the assumption that they shouldn't ask and just get grumpier and grumpier.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to bother the storyteller. I will flat out say, if you come to the table hungry, say that you need to eat before it's a problem.
Yes.
Like, I rushed here. I'm so sorry. I didn't grab a chance to order something. Can I DoorDash something here real quick just so I can be ready for you? Yeah. I'm sorry if I'm eating in front of everyone. That would make me a storyteller just fine. Like,
I would far rather you take a 5-minute break to grab your DoorDash than, 3 hours into my 6-hour game, be like, I can't play anymore.
Or I'm throwing Snicker bars at you to be like, dude, you are not the barbarian.
It's like the Snickers commercials. Yeah. It really is. Yeah.
Honestly, Snickers should make a D&D commercial or
I would like to rage. Would you want a Snickers instead? You're not you.
Yeah. And suddenly the druid comes back and is petting animals, and everything's fine. But that's the whole point, is that you do change as a person without sleep, without care. If you literally roll out of bed and roll into game, 9 times out of 10, you're not all there.
Yeah, I've actually heard people say before, you can tell the difference between a well-rested group and a sleep-deprived group, because sleep-deprived groups will get real murder hobo-y real quick.
Yeah,
because you don't have the patience for it, you don't have the forethought for it. You fall back on lizard brain and you just hit it with a rock.
F them, yeah.
Hit it with a rock.
Yeah,
that'll solve the problem.
Yeah. At the same time, on the other side of that, looking at your other players around you and helping them.
Yes.
If you can check one other player while the DM's scrambling at the last minute to pull things together, maybe they're having a technological problem, maybe they're still trying to pull stuff together because they're one of those DMs who are like, oh crap, I forgot X.
Rob?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say even regardless.
I agree.
Your storyteller is having the best day of their life. Still check your fellow players.
Yeah. And if you can help.
Still contribute to the well-being of the group if you're able to.
Yep.
And again, if you're able to. Look, we understand some people are on the needs help end. Some people are on the I have the spoons to help end.
Yes.
That's not at all what we're trying to get out of. If you are on the need help end, you're on the need help end.
In the common spoon pool at the middle of the table,
yes.
Take a spoon, give a spoon is all there.
Take a penny, leave a penny. Yes,
right.
only pennies are spoons.
Yeah.
Look up spoon theory if you don't know what we're talking about.
But effectively, if you've got a bit of energy to give it.
Yeah.
And everyone will be better for it.
And I would say this kind of extends to get a group chat going before the game.
Yeah.
If you are meeting in person and snacks are a thing.
Yeah.
That is not the storyteller's responsibility. The storyteller has put everything else, for me at least, right? I'm working on miniatures, I'm working on terrain, I am working on my story, I'm getting Spotify playlists set up to make sure that major beats that I have in my story have appropriate musical cues to them.
Beats.
These are all the things that I'm focusing on.
Yeah.
Do I have all of my stuff together? I'm bringing a whole board full of terrain.
Sorry, I'm just getting the Rick and Morty in my head. Get your shit together.
Get it all together. Get it all together. Take it to the store and sell it. I don't care. Just get it together.
But yeah, you're literally not only like getting that stuff together, you're bringing it. You're trying to make sure it gets safely. You know?
Yeah, like, and I'm not thinking like, are there going to be Cheetos there?
Exactly.
I'm not bringing the Cheetos. I am bringing fully painted miniatures and terrain. You get the Cheetos, you know.
Yeah.
I'm
not even gonna ask.
Right.
I'm not even gonna ask.
I am straight up just going to assume somebody else is providing the Cheetos.
Yeah.
You know, you open your house to us every game, so because we play over here.
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, you have already fulfilled any obligation you had at the table just by opening your door and saying, "Come in."
But at the same time, like my Polishness kicks in, and I'm like, must feed.
Must feed.
Must
food.
feed.
Food is I love you.
This friend is broken and not fed yet. Feed. But yeah, it is that
skinny.
it is that check in on Discord on whatever that group chat is with the group outside of the Storyteller. Like include them, of course, but just be like, hey guys, I'm stopping at the store. Do we need anything? Or can someone stop at the store and grab something? Or hey, you seem to be running a little bit late. Could you grab some stuff on your way in?
Sure.
You know, all of that can be checked and helpful.
Yes, agreed.
I have more than enough times been stressed out as the Storyteller coming to a game, sat down, got all my stuff set up, and realized there were no snacks that I had available, and then a pile shows up from the group. And I'm like, because by a third of that game, all of those bags are open, things are being eaten, people are drinking, there's a certain energy, and you're like, okay, the food is what was necessary, let's keep rolling.
Yeah,
that is
absolutely.
And that you feel that, and you know that. You know that that's the way it's rolling. Likewise, and I'm going to throw this on the digital side, if you are sitting at a digital screen waiting for your DM, do not make them babysit you. Do not make them babysit you.
Yeah.
That is time that you are dedicating to them. If you need to excuse yourself, excuse yourself. But say that you're excusing yourself. Don't just walk away from a story.
Agreed.
Like, there's a whole litany of things to do virtually, but again, do not make them babysit you. That is the worst when you're staring at a screen and you look to go to talk to somebody and they're not even on camera. They're not even there. And you're like, everybody's just waiting because we have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Are they in the bathroom? Are they dead?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Now, there's a tradition that, believe it or not, I did not engage in until I started joining in your games.
Correct.
And that is the GM bribe.
Correct. Now, this is, I think, an age-old thing that I had heard tell of. And when I started doing gaming back in Palladium days, was kind of a thing, because it was like you wanted your Storyteller to give you more XP or some kind of a benefit.
Yeah.
You know, buttering the GM is not a bad idea.
Now,
you know?
I want to be perfectly clear here.
Yeah.
We're not legitimately talking about underhanded deals with your GM to make make your character more powerful in the deal. The GM bribe is just the colloquial name for it we use at our table for essentially just bringing an extra little snack or something. For you, it used to be a Slurpee.
Yeah, I used to love Slurpees. I really can't do them much anymore.
For me, usually somebody gets me a bag of Sour Patch Kids. I love sour gummies and stuff like that.
Literally, in honor of this tonight, I have a bag.
This is a bag of Airheads Extreme Sour Candies.
Yes, which is in your favorite.
They're little rainbows.
I thought you'd appreciate that.
Little gay candies. I love them.
Sour candies. But I wanted to make sure that we had that appreciation going on. And the thing is for me, it's a little serotonin shot.
Yeah.
Whether it's sugar, whether it's just a little like a cookie, something like I remember once where somebody brought oatmeal cookies for me, and I was like, "These are amazing, thank you."
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just destroyed them the whole time.
And like I may not even like I'll probably eat one or two with the sour candies, but like I'm not going to be like mowing down on them the entire time.
No.
But just the fact that somebody thought of me, brought one for me, you know, and stuff like that. It reminds me a lot in Function. If anybody out there has played Fortnite.
Oh, yeah.
So you fly in on a flying bus.
Yes.
At the beginning of your matches.
Yes.
And you all parachute out of the back of this bus.
The party jump bus, yeah.
And so a while back, somebody was like, "Why can't you thank the bus driver?"
Yeah.
Because in school, when you're getting off the bus, you thank the bus driver for driving you to and from safely. You know, it's such a little gesture.
Yeah.
And so, but Epic Games thought it was a great idea, and now you can press a button to thank your bus driver
Yep.
on the way out and parachuting into your Fortnite matches. And for me, the GM bribe is just the thanking your bus driver.
It is very much that, and letting them know that you were thinking of them prior to the game.
Now, that's not to say that we won't be mawing down on it if it is a culinary snack. And the reason I bring this up is because we all talk about, like, okay, players make sure that you're fed. But, like, we also talked a little bit about the amount of energy that your storyteller is throwing into running that game.
Yes.
And they are voicing all the NPCs, and they're doing all the narration, and they're keeping track of 4 to 6 people at their table, or 11 if you're, Draven.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, they are putting a lot of energy. It may look like they're doing very little, but they are putting out a lot of energy and keeping track of a lot of things all at once. And making up a lot of stuff in their head and whatnot.
It's tiring.
And so we brought up earlier Brennan Lee Mulligan talking about food.
Yes.
He's got this amazing rant he did about how he's a snacking storyteller, but the biggest problem he has is that the same hole that the story comes out of is the same hole that the food has to go into.
That's right.
And that if he could have an extra mouth on his back and just have someone shoveling salami into it
Yes.
the whole time.
Yes. He would accept it. He would just accept it. The whole concept of having like a gibbering mouth or GM where like most of the holes are just for input and one is for output.
Yes. Yes. But I and the thing is, it's funny. First off, you should look it up. It's hilarious.
It's
Just look up Brennan Lee Mulligan almond rant, and I'm sure you'll find
It's
it.
fantastic.
But I mean, it was funny because it was Brennan, of course. But it's true.
Yeah.
We are putting out a lot of energy, and it's good to have that extra snack. And just the GM bribe is almost not only a way of saying thank you and I see you, but it's also a way of saying, hey, take care of yourself as well.
Yes. 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 You matter at the table.
You are a player as well.
Yeah.
Your fun and your well-being also matter.
There is that. And what is it? That we always say at the end, you are not immune to your own
You're not immune
bullshit.
to your own BS. Yep.
That's right. So always remember that. Event coordinator.
Event coordinator.
With all of the other things, I still feel that this is the most exhausting.
It can be. It absolutely can be. This is the most soul-crushing of them, honestly. So I know a lot of you out there have regular game nights. We always play on, on Thursdays at 6 or whatever.
Yeah, or they're pre-scheduled because you're doing it at your local gaming store, so you have to schedule it to have a table at a specific time, and that's totally understandable.
You and I, we have an older gaming group.
Yes.
So we have an abundance of lives. A couple of us have children.
Yeah.
Jobs that call upon us at various times. Social events with family or whatnot, et cetera, et cetera. So we play once a month.
Yeah.
Because that's really all we can do. We also have a couple players who live like more than a half hour away. So in one case, a little on the far side of an hour.
Probably, I would say close to an hour in some cases, and definitely during the winter. It gets worse. Yeah,
and especially like if we had tried to play on a weeknight, that would be like rush hour trying to get in here.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
So, we can't play every week.
No.
So we schedule monthly games, and we just try to make the biggest event out of them we possibly can. And so that means that every game kind of needs to get scheduled around everybody's adult lives, and especially with 3 of us trying to run a game, you, me, and the Mad Elf.
And some players cross over.
Some players cross over, some players don't, so it's a little bit easier. I'm in all 3 of those games. You are in all 3 of those games.
Gleefully.
Vicky's in all 3 of those games.
But, I mean, I would say trying to just get the timing on some of those things can be challenging. I think we do a good job coordinating because the 3 of us GMs will figure things out and kind of work out that timing. But I think it also comes down to the willingness of the players and just remembering to do the scheduling. And because it's upon us as the storytellers to do that coordination, it can be very frustrating when players aren't prepared or when they're just expecting you to come up with all the dates and coordinational times and things like that.
Yeah.
But there's nobody sitting there going, hey guys, I'm excited for playing for this. When can we play next? I will figure, let's figure this out at the table, versus the storyteller trying to get everybody to look at the Discord and try to look at the dates and give up the times and communicate with what kind of problems are going to come up out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or players who hold back information or forget information about certain dates and then suddenly are like, oh, crap, I'm out of town for a month.
What? We're 1 week away from game. What do you mean you're out of town from?
Yeah, and
yeah,
and the truth behind that is we have older players, and our players are very good about, in this month at some point my company's sending me out of town. All right, that's good to know. When we get closer, just keep us informed. I will make sure plots don't revolve around you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Good
heads up. Good heads up.
But and sometimes that's hard when it's week to week. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, like, if the DM has to reschedule in their head when things are going to happen in the story, when certain plot beats need to happen, if they need to rejigger things, they need that information. But they also need to know who's on, who's in, who's ready to do this. It's one thing to say, oh, we'll play if any 3 players are here. That's great, but I mean, that's not great when one player literally leaves off on a statement and you're like, okay, next game we'll pick this back up, and that person doesn't show up for 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that almost happened to me last game.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, player, it was Sean's character. Sean went digging into a plot.
Yep.
I decided, okay, I'm going to give you all the plot. We're going to make this entire game session essentially about what plot information you find.
Yeah.
This is Thalian Arroway's plot.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Work.
an hour before game started, he unexpectedly got called into work.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they had an IT emergency and they just needed him.
Yep.
And so, luckily, he was able to resolve it pretty quickly.
Yeah, came right back.
We only started an hour late.
Wasn't bad.
Wasn't too bad. We still got to play. Still had a great time.
So I have a question for you. Just a quick pause. Were you prepared to roll on with something else?
I could probably have made something happen.
But you didn't have something packed in the back of your head.
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't because I didn't really plan for the eventuality.
And here's the thought. What I'm saying is that's honest right here.
Yeah.
To our listeners. You, after all of these years, were unprepared for that moment and eventuality.
Sure.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we're saying is that's okay.
Well, it was, and this.
And
is
I'm not saying we have to examine that moment, but
no. But I kind of want to because it does feed into something else I kind of wanted to talk about, and that is, like you brought up the idea of like, we'll play if any 3 players show up,
right?
But what if you're in the middle of a major plot beat?
Yeah,
and that's where we were.
Yeah,
we were in the middle of a major plot beat because I was going to pick up the time because the character went and questioned an NPC that I dropped in.
Yeah.
And the plot I was going to do was going to be a direct result of information he got from that NPC.
Yep.
It wouldn't have made sense for the events not to unfold immediately in the timeline. Mm-hmm.
But in looking at it from a different perspective, and this is just from an outsider's point of view on that story, is you could have set the whole thing aside and Sean aside and had events transpose that shifted that timeline.
I could have.
And allowed the rest of the group to do something through the night and even the next day, and then he returns with information and the story continues.
Yeah, I'd have had to give it some thought, and I'd have probably started off with like interludes to.
And that's and honestly, I think that would have worked out great.
Yeah. Because
those types of moments, especially about Savage World, gives you that breath. But there's nothing to say that you couldn't have said, okay, he's too busy. I'm going to need 10 minutes to put something together and roll us into this. And then to look at Sean and just be like, hey, whenever you get back here, we're rolling in. I'm rolling into something else. We will return to yours and return to your character.
Yeah. Yeah.
At that point. And just kind of put it on pause. And that happens. And I think that's perfectly okay. And I think as a player, having a player be accepted, like, if you're tragically late to a game, you may be overlooked story-wise, and they may say, hey, I kind of set your character off to the side because I needed to.
Yeah, yeah.
And just be understanding. That's all I'm saying with that part of it is, as a player, be understanding that you maybe get set to the side, and they may be like, hey, I'm going to hand you an NPC to play for this session.
Mm-hmm.
Because I need your character to be a certain place because of what happened.
Yeah, sure.
So
Sure. But also kind of getting back to the point though.
Sure.
Like we have strayed a little bit here. I mean, not only that, but like we kind of mentioned earlier, take the initiative to as a player.
Mm-hmm.
Take the initiative from your storyteller to kind of get the group together and have that discussion about like when do we want to have next game session, or even just saying like, hey, I had a drop a message in Discord and just be like, I had a great time tonight, and just I'm still kind of just jazzed and buzzing about game.
Yeah,
that's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
That's great to hear as a storyteller. Keep that enthusiasm going. We feed off of that. When players show up, play their character or not,
right,
and then just go home. And we get zero feedback from you other than, roses and thorns at the end of the night.
Or worse, it goes so long that you're exhausted at the end, you have no energy, and so we're left with the tired version of you.
Yeah.
Not the one who is excited and enjoying the game, but the tired version, and that's what the feeling we're left with.
The tired version that says, whose feedback is, I was exhausted 2 hours ago, I need to go home.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it.
And then we don't hear anything from you until like the next month, and we're left feeling like, did you even enjoy yourself?
Which kind of brings me to the third piece, which is the storytelling aspect.
Yeah.
And I'm going to shift things around here a little bit, Time, because I think it fits into the statement we just said, which is when you come back, you often don't recall what happened. And I don't know how much that burns as a storyteller. Now, granted, we are embedded in it. For the last week and a half to 2 weeks, maybe, depending on how long it's been since the last game, we've been working on it in our own heads. So we're there. We're on it. Like, we know what the game is. And to have players just show up and be like, oh yeah, where were we? I don't remember anything. I don't know. And have no notes, no follow-up, no conversation. They're just looking to the storyteller to fill them in and, give them the complete synopsis of everything up to that point, maybe years worth of campaign, that they're like, oh, yeah, right. Yeah, okay. And you're like, you have no energy because you have no recall, and it feels like you have no care.
Yeah, my game that I put all this energy into had that little impact on you that you have no recollection of this place. Yeah, that's rough. That is absolutely rough. And don't get me wrong. Like I understand some people. Like I have a tough time personally hanging on to the vicissitudes of complex plots. I at times found the movie Count of Monte Cristo difficult to follow. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just simply because that many machinations, that many moving parts, that many characters involved in subtle political plays against one another, I tend to miss the subtleties. I tend to get, I'll get the broad sweeping motions of things. I'll get the gist of that dude's bad, that dude's good, that dude's trying to screw over that dude. But like, wait a minute, why are we in this scene? Why do we care what this dude thinks? Oh, well, he was trying to bribe this other character, but that other character kidnapped this other character, and that character is that character's mother, and it's like, okay, I miss that sort of stuff, and I know that's probably a frustration point for you.
It is, but in the same regard, I understand it.
Yeah,
because I'm embedded. Like I said, I'm embedded on the story side. I know all these pieces. But it also explains, like, am I doing the right job of explaining it so that everybody at the table has enough pieces to keep the story going?
Sure. I guess my point in bringing that up, though, is just kind of to say, like, not all of us are going to get everything.
Right.
And I'm admitting to my own failures in getting things right here on the show, you know, as being the first foot forward here.
Yeah.
I don't always get things either. But, like, if you asked me what happened last game, I could tell you the vagaries of it. We showed up at Everdawn. Okay, there was we brought the eye stalk and the coffee and the cloth back for the NPC who requested them, whose name is D. We made a bunch of D's nuts.
You did.
Jokes. We got our work. We consulted with a lawyer first and asked them how to get around the orb of law. They had some answers for us. We then basically got in on a work visa as delivery people for D. And made our deliveries. We were very polite about it, which made D look really, really good. And then we found the beholder that the eye stalk belonged to. And we talked to that beholder. And we gave him back his eye stalk and turned him back from stone. He told us that he was chilled out there with a bunch of the Justicars. That he had also turned to stone essentially to keep them from, the withers of time, right? For when the time was right, they were going to, rise up and retake the city or something. I'm not really sure what all that was going on, but maybe we didn't get the answer to it. I don't know. And then we returned to D. Unfortunately, we didn't have the eye stalk. We were empty-handed. So we then said, hey, we know we're going empty-handed. We talked to his tailor and said, what could we give to the man who has everything? Because we're coming back empty-handed. And they said something that would make him look good. And I don't remember what our solution for that was, but that's kind of where we left off, was coming back to D and saying, we don't have your eye stalk, but.
Right. And we literally left off right there with the
right
but.
There. So, I can tell you all of that.
That was
now,
incredible.
I don't know. There's probably a lot of, subtle stuff that was going on with the Beholder. There's probably a lot of stuff that was going on with the Justicars that I don't understand, etc., etc. My character's not really focused on any of that stuff. She's got another side quest she's working on. But I think your players, at very least, should be able to do that.
Yeah.
What were the major beats that we hit?
And that wasn't recent. So I'm...
Thank you.
There's a soft applause there. I'm very happy that you hit every one of those chunks. As a single player at the table, you could then communicate to the others who will then trigger events in their minds.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is...
Because everybody takes away a different experience.
Correct.
From it,
and sees a different perspective, grabs a little different edge, focuses on a different part. I know you're focused on Marco and Madeline and killing a certain NPC.
Yeah.
And those are in your head. So things that roll around that, ways that you can get to that are important to you. Whereas other players are hearing for other components of it. And that allows then that story around. But someone has to come forward with that knowledge. And if no one is good at that, someone's better be good at taking some notes. Yeah. To be able to just give a quick outline. And be able to iterate back the outline so that everybody can be refreshed.
And I know a lot of storytellers will even put an incentive out there of here's a Benny or here's an inspiration or something like that, or here's a drama die to the person who can, essentially recite the plot, who wants to try.
Yeah, and I've done that at times when people are like,
And maybe give out up to 3 of them for, contributing answers and stuff like that.
Because balance is a lie.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
Balance is a crutch.
Yeah. So what else can we do for our storytellers? As I massage the air here.
Right. Well, I think helping out your storyteller even begins before the story starts. I think before you even play your first game, probably some of the best groundwork you can lay for your storyteller is by engaging them during the session 0 and making sure that you're leaning into their story literally from the first moment.
There's a lovely interview with again, where I'm gonna lick the boots of Brendan Lee Mulligan again. There's a lovely interview with him where someone's asking him, he goes, I often get times when people are like, hey, I want you to play in this game and really enjoy yourself. So, just play what you want. You're like, what can I play that will be good for your story? Oh, no, you can just play whatever. Motherfucker, listen to me.
Yeah. I
am playing in your game. How do I add to make your game better?
Yeah.
He gets angry about it because so many people are like, oh, no, you just play whatever you want. Play something you really want to play. No, stop. No. We are focused on a story here. Talk to me about the story.
Exactly. You are curating an experience for all of us. Let me make something that fits into that experience. Because the worst, we've talked about the different types of players before, the different types of characters you'll see, and one of them is the Hobbit or the 13th Warrior.
Yeah.
The 13th Warrior, okay, we're making a Viking game about going in, on a big Viking crusade. What character are you making? An Arabian poet who doesn't speak the language. Okay, we're a bunch of dwarves, and we're going to reclaim our kingdom from a greedy dragon. What character are you playing? I'm playing a hobbit cook that doesn't want to go on the adventure. And I'm going to bitch about it the whole time. You know? So those are the two types of players. Now, when you as a storyteller tell a player, I don't care, just make whatever, the chances of them making a hobbit or a 13th warrior go up astronomically, because you're not laying the groundwork for them to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Conversely, when a player comes to a storyteller and says, what do you need in your story? What can I make that would help your story in some way?
Or add to it.
Or play into a plot line that you're going to be leaning into heavily or something like that. Like, that is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
That is a gift. That shows, first off, even if I don't give you a solid answer, that already shows that your interest as a player is in making the story better for everyone. And that just is such a beautiful gift, right?
Yeah. And to something that Overwatch just said is, I do that all the time. So what does the party need? It's a cleric. It's always a cleric. And
it's always a cleric.
You know, I would say class-wise, I think that's accurate. And for a game that's highly mechanical, sure, in D&D, knowing what class you're going to play is important. But if the story's narrative, make sure you're leaning into that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that, like, you can say, hey, is there something... I'm coming into the game late. Is there something narratively that would fit? You did this for me.
Yeah.
When you decided to flip over to do Ravana, you were like, hey, what would work? I'm thinking of kind of leaning into this kind of a character. I'm like, yeah, a guide would actually work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think a guide is a good character. I think that would... I can narratively craft that into the story. Looking back, I probably would have given your character a different turn, and it would have changed the game completely. I would have made you a lore master.
Okay. Sure.
Like just because I think it would have completely changed the game in a different direction. But on Overthought, I was like, no, I can immediately put you into game as a guide. There's no question of how I could fit that in.
Yeah.
It makes sense for where the story should be going.
Mm-hmm.
And for all intents and purposes, it did.
Yeah, it did.
So
you got another one on here?
I do. I actually have two in there. One that constantly comes back to haunt me with you, which is fantastic and terrible at the same time.
Okay.
Because it's a constant reminder that I always have to put a sticky note on my screen for, which is be in character.
Yeah.
As a storyteller, it's really easy to use your players' names and not your characters' names.
Yeah.
It's even easier to screw up and follow the players' leads on the names of your NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
And use the tropes that they're framing up because it's easier for them to remember versus sticking to your guns of the names of the characters that you should be using.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the NPC cards help, but I think as a player, one of the best things you can do is be your character and use your character's voice. Now, I'm not saying tonally or things like that. You don't have to do that, but speaking from your character's perspective to other characters, to the NPCs directly, makes for a very different game, and a much more engaging game because it has meaning to the storyteller and to the other players that you are involved.
Yeah.
You're not just saying, you're not using statements like, well, my character is doing this, right? You can say, Belfour, is going to step forward and attack this NPC and use their name, and or I shout this. So you're actively engaging as that character and speaking to other characters.
Yep, absolutely.
And
this kind of leads into the next point. I'm not going to make that jump to the next point quite yet, but just to kind of how one of the things that bridges is that people tend to read the vibe at the table and gauge their own responses off of it. And so if you are out of character, you are contributing to the environment of being out of character. And it's kind of like when you're at work, right? If you see a bunch of people standing around at the water cooler talking, you think that it's okay to be standing around at the water cooler talking.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the vibe in the room.
Mm-hmm.
The vibe in the room is relaxed. We're not working. We're not punching a deadline. Maybe you do have a deadline. Maybe you really should be working. But if other people are slacking off, you kind of get that vibe of like, maybe I can slack off a little too, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas it's the same thing with roleplay. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If I've got 4 people at a table who are all using I statements in character,
Mm-hmm.
you know, 1 or 2 of them may be using a voice for their character, you know. Sean as the alien does this all the time, and I think it's great. He was a little. He actually he talked to me a little bit. He's like, I was like, is it okay? Like, I'm like, dude, it's great. I mean, is it a theater British accent? No, it's as British accents go, it's awful. But like, the fact is, you do it.
Yeah.
And it puts you in character. It's a character voice.
Yeah.
And so we know when you're in character. And you use it as your character's voice, and it says something about your character that your actions and your words don't. It adds a snootiness to literally everything you do.
It's palatable, it's notable, it's there.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes, and I'm going to say it, sometimes it's arrogant and bitter in the way that it sits in the room, and that's beautiful for his character.
Exactly,
because
that's the type of character he is.
No, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It puts the right color into the space, and again, brings us all back to the game and the story.
Exactly. So when you hear Lord Thalion talking like this to everybody at the table, you're like, okay, yeah, no. And so you know you're not talking around the water cooler. Everybody's buckled down working at this point. And so you're like, oh, maybe
we should bring it back to game.
Maybe we should bring it back to game. It's that nice little reminder. So the more people at the table who are contributing to the air of being in character, the more in character everyone's going to stay. And I think the better the story is going to be for it. And I mean, maybe this isn't, like, again, it's a vibe at the table. Some of y'all play, you know, beer and pretzels games.
Yep.
And that's awesome.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Y'all are having fun. Your fun is not wrong.
No.
But if you are playing a game where character and story are things that are important to you, staying in character is one of the best ways you can contribute to that.
I think the other aspect that kind of sits along with being in character, even for OSR games, is leaning into the game itself. If you're going to have conversation at the table about the game, that's great and all, but make sure that it's about the game, that you're not running down a tangent and showing off a bunch of Instagram photos and then talking about some stuff with work right as there's descriptions come at you, or combat from other players. You are part of that combat. It's going to be your turn in a second here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't distract another player who should be quote unquote studying their spells.
Yep.
You know,
don't start talking at the water cooler.
Yeah.
You know,
that's all part of that discussion. Be engaged. If you need break time, ask for break time. But don't just force a break in the middle where as the DM kindly gets you and goes, all right, what are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm sorry, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah. Or honestly, like, even just being dispassionate about, because I mean, we've mentioned it a couple times before, just being dispassionate about the game kills the enthusiasm for the storyteller and for everybody. Yeah, honestly, and like the exact opposite is true. You know, enthusiasm is going to feed the table,
and I think that's where like we step into the last one, which is the concept of that first follower.
Yes,
which is we've used it before as a term, and that's the idea that like you have the initial idiot, which is where the first follower comes in. You have that person in the concept is like, you know, dancing at a concert in an open air area. Like, people are sitting down, they're all watching the concert, no one's dancing, but you see one guy get up and he just starts dancing in this open area. Nobody does anything, they just see him. But then, like, somebody randomly walks up to join them. That is the first follower. Now there are 2 people dancing. Now it's a community.
Yep.
Usually that first follower has a friend or someone else who's with them who will then join them. Now it's becoming a herd.
Yeah.
And within a very short spin after that, everyone's dancing, and the people who aren't feel like they should be.
Exactly.
And that's the concept that works in over and over again. That is a standard herd movement. You can see it in animals, you can see it in people. That is how things move. That first follower after the initial idiot is what makes things happen. So, your idiot at the table is your storyteller. I'm sorry, it's the case of all things. They're trying to get you to be in character, they're trying to be there with the story. That first follower needs to be there for them.
Yep.
To drag everyone back to the story.
And we get it. Like, we've all been there at the table. We were all new once where, you know, you're kind of, I'll say it, embarrassed to role play. You know,
or to be engaged.
You're just uncertain about, you know, well, you know, Sean is not a new player by any means.
No.
But even when we're driving home and he's like, is it okay if I do the voice?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful that you do the voice, you know? But there's that sense of self-consciousness, there's that sense of embarrassment of putting yourself out there and performing in front of your friends.
Or even just explaining a rule. Like, if maybe you don't think you know the rules, but you're about to say, like, hey, couldn't we do it this way? That's engagement.
Yeah.
Engage. Even if you try.
Sure.
That you may stumble,
Sure.
and everybody will be able to, like, actually, that's not going to work, but that's a good idea.
But putting that out there invites everyone else at the table to act the same way as you.
Correct.
To say, okay, well, I might feel weird about it, but Sean's doing a silly, low-quality British, knockoff accent. Yeah, whatever I'm doing is, like, half as embarrassing as that. Let's go,
The first time you did interludes.
Yeah.
You were surprised who your first follower was.
I was.
And everyone at the table joined.
I was.
Yep.
I was.
Yeah. Somebody who doesn't normally step up to tell a story.
The person who runs away from the spotlight actively was like, I want to do the interlude.
We're like, all right.
Okay, the spotlight is yours,
And told a beautiful thing.
And told a beautiful story, yeah, absolutely.
And so, again, you can be the first follower at anything. But if the story is starting to flutter because people are starting to drift, be that person to step back in with the storyteller and engage.
Yeah.
Be the first follower.
All
Follow
right.
that idiot in the dark.
I think we have beaten this one into the ground enough.
There are
Players,
questions.
we love you. You are the heartbeat and blood flow of all of our games.
Let's get some questions.
Let's get some questions. Gen X.
Most cooperative TTRPGs assume that the players will work together in some way. Yes, they do assume that. Based on my experience, lone wolf characters and passive characters have a tendency to not engage with the group or even be in direct opposition with the group. Yeah, I agree with that statement. Should new players avoid playing these types of characters? God, yes.
Experienced players should avoid playing these types of characters.
Yes, I agree. I think unless you're playing an OSR where the group is forced to be a group, literally forced to be a group, those types of characters are terrible. How can GMs and players include these characters without disrupting the game?
I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and just say that by their very existence, lone wolf / passive characters are disruptive to the game. I don't know that there's a great way of including them because passive characters are like brick walls. You can try to include them everywhere, but they're just not going to engage because by their very nature, they are passive.
I think the only time where I've seen it successful, and it tends to be in indie games where these kind of characters can flourish, is that there's other mechanics that draw them back. A bond, a quest, a requirement. The reason why Strider was around with the hobbits was because he had to do a job that involved them not dying, right? He knew what he had to achieve, and the only reason why he was being as standoffish as he was because he didn't want anybody to know who he really was, or in any of his involvement with said ring, right? But again,
I don't know if he counts as a lone wolf character though.
In an aspect, he was silent. He was kind of a separatist, but the story drove him to meet with the other characters, and I think that's the difference: is that a lone wolf cannot remain a lone wolf. A passive cannot remain a passive.
Yeah,
that is how
okay.
it works.
Okay, so
there has to be elements that draw them into the narrative with the group.
As long as you're planting the seed of a later flower to bloom.
Correct.
Of character development, then, if you start off one way and then, like, as a lone wolf character, learn to get along with others or something
and
like
it
that,
is a path. There is a direct path
Sure.
that you have plotted with your storyteller of saying, okay, these are the elements that you as a player must bring. To be able to do that, then I think it could work. But
Yeah,
it should
okay.
not be a new player's character ever.
Yeah. And I would dare say, again, like, you're going to have some explaining to do as an experienced player to get one of those at my table.
If I had to say anything for new players at any table, your first character should always be outgoing, connected, 100% trusting of the group, and above all things, ready to go. Like, they need to be the most active person, because it's hard to keep that energy level, but by having that energy level, you will do all the things. You will be involved in all the things, and everybody will be involved with you.
Yeah.
And then you can always learn what aspects you want to switch to later.
Yep.
And other characters you want to try. But start by going with that direction, and you will be very surprised.
All right, so Nevum
A
asks...
series of questions.
Series of questions. I have a precise idea of the character I want to create, but it doesn't fit exactly in the group or story. Should I keep the concept or not?
Throw it on the shelf. That's my personal opinion.
I'm gonna give a slightly different answer.
Go right ahead.
And that is, run it by your storyteller.
Oh, always.
Because just like with Ravana, my character, my ice wizard in your game, I was like, hey, I've got this character concept, and you were like, all right, the group is here, the group is maybe going there. Oh, okay, hold on a second. I see a way in which your character could work.
Right.
And you and I collaborated on a way to make their backstory something that fit into your existing plot, and boom, dropped her right in.
Yep.
You may not think your character fits exactly in there, but if you're willing to be flexible on 1 or 2 points, your storyteller can often find a way to make things work. But it requires the initiative of opening yourself up to change. And I'm not talking about change like your character's, whole backstory, but like, if you're like, oh, well, I came from Kingdom A, and they're like, what if you came from Kingdom B? Okay. I mean, I'm not telling you can't play a Hexblade Warlock.
Right.
I'm just saying your Hexblade Warlock has a slightly different nationality.
Right.
Okay, we can work with that sort of thing.
And the one thing I will say is, if you are bound by the mechanics of your character, like, I've always really wanted to play a spell-slinging archer. Where all of my, I want to get to a point where my character basically is a super arcane archer. Like, that's the thing that I want to do.
Yeah.
Then care less about the narrative. Let them help craft the narrative and fit them into the story. On the other hand, if you're like, I really want to be a fallen aristocrat who is hiding that. Maybe I killed somebody that I shouldn't have in the aristocratic circles, and if it was found out that I'm alive, it would mean shame to my family, so I'm hiding. Okay, let's see if we can make a character around that.
Sure.
That fits in the story.
Sure.
And find the strongest aspect of what you want to do, and then let the storyteller help craft it in the story and be very flexible in that regard. But don't be like, I really want to play an aristocratic character who's fallen from the thing, who's a, undead Nightblade. And it's, okay, that's very, very, very narrow. Like, no, your character's undead, and we have a paladin in the group who's a mainstay. This isn't going to work.
Yeah, and I think part 2 of this answer is be ready to take no as an answer.
Yeah, and just shelf it.
But run it by your storyteller if it means something to you.
Yep.
So he asks then, I have a social character which loves to speak to NPCs. How do I tackle these situations without encumbering others with my too long talk?
Oh boy.
Yeah. This is what we call D&D for one.
Yeah. I think that the best thing that you can do is remember spotlighting. Work with your storyteller to have spotlight moments to allow your character to have your social combat. And remember that social combat can include other players.
Yeah. Yep.
Include somebody else with the story. Even if you're using them as arm candy to flower up and sugar up the situation, go lean into that.
At least one other player at the table has a chance to give input, has a chance to, even, again, like you said, if they're just arm candy and they stand there the whole time, they've at least experienced it. Their character was there. They can have input about it later. They can react to it. They can feel some way about it.
Always bring somebody with you if that is your... And even if the conversation is spontaneous, meta and look at another character and be like, hey, drift into this scene.
Yeah. And I would say also, don't be afraid to fall back on your skill rolls to simulate lengthy conversations.
I think it's a great way to do it.
And just be like, okay, you guys clearly are going to shoot the crap for the rest of the night. We're not going to role play 45 minutes of you drinking beer with this dude and,
what are you trying to achieve?
Stories. What is your end goal here?
Yeah.
What are you trying to get out of him?
I'm just trying to make him a better friend. Great.
Okay, roll a persuasion check. Congratulations, you got a raise on that. All right, that means his attitude towards you improves too. You come away from it laughing and cheering and sharing stories all through the night.
He thinks well of you.
He thinks well of you. Next.
Yep. Lastly, how can I draw, during a game session, other players into my character, plot, and backstory?
Always invite at least one other player
Yeah.
on any activities your character is taking towards their personal plot.
And make sure that they're engaged in that event with you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't say don't pick them at random. Like, hey, to give an example from my own game, Thalion is going down to the docks. Well, Thalion doesn't even have a fighting skill.
Yeah.
He carries a rapier, does not know how to use it.
No.
It does not have any combat damage dealing spells either. They're all support and control spells. I'm going down to the docks. I know that can be a rough part of town. Rhaegar, you have a gigantic sword. Would you mind coming with me and watching my back down there?
Yep.
Cool. That gives a perfectly in-game reason for Thalion to want Rhaegar to come with him.
Yeah.
That involves Rhaegar in the scene, so that way if anything happens, there's at least one other character at the table who has input into it.
Yep.
And that brings it all back to the group.
Yep. I agree with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Huluvu asks, if I want to take the story in a direction that the GM doesn't seem to be going, how do I approach the GM in a way that respects them and lets them know my feelings or thoughts?
Just talk to them.
Yeah. Be very honest.
We've had long discussions about Ravana in your game.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, outright from the idea of, like, I don't think Ravana fits in your story anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, oh, tell me a little bit about that. I'm like, well, you changed the whole paradigm of the story. She was there to do a particular job. That job is no longer applicable. Everyone she knows and loves is dead. She doesn't have any attachments to this world.
Nope.
As far as I'm concerned, she's honestly thinking of just joining one of these tribes and being their, wise woman.
And I was 100% ready to say, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I said, but, I mean, I don't know that I don't know that I want to do that.
Right.
But if that's where the story takes her, that's where the story takes her, And so we had a long conversation about, okay, well, what is she looking for,
Right.
You came up with the Madeline and Marco plotline to give her a new family to glomp onto, a new place to call home. And I grabbed onto that because that's exactly what she was looking for. It's just something to call home on this side of the terrible events that happened.
Yep, and I gave you an out if you wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and you'll find that if you do have a storyteller that cares about making their plot the best thing that it can be, if you want to go off in a weird direction, just let them know. Like, hey, you dropped this. My character's really interested in pursuing that. And just by having that conversation, what you are doing is you are letting... First off, you are warning your storyteller, I may try to pursue this. So, start thinking about what the outcomes of that are now.
Yeah.
So that I don't surprise you with it and have you make it up on the spot at the table.
Yeah.
But second off, they may have some input about it.
Yeah.
They may tell you, like, okay, you can pursue that, but I'm warning you right now, that's going to remove you from the game because, et cetera, whatever reasons they might have,
Right.
But yeah, you should have some back and forth with them. And the best possible outcome is they go, that's a great idea. I'll start working on it. And then when you do ask about it in character, it is a fully fleshed out, ready to go plot.
Yeah. And one of my favorite ones that I read about was a DM who was talking about this, and he said, I had a player who literally, like, we were halfway into a plot line. I had a few NPCs that they were getting to know, but, like, they didn't seem to care too much about them. But one of the NPCs, I had literally had a note that said how they were going to find the body of that NPC. It's like, oh, because there's some investment there. They've talked to him enough times. He has weight, like, they has things that they need and information, and they're going back to him, and they're going to find him dead. And now all of his stuff has been sacked out of his place and taken, so they're going to have to follow his stuff. And during the dinner, like during our break, one of the players came up to me and said, hey, I kind of want to beat the group back to this guy's place. Okay, what do you mean? Well, I want them to find me with him. What? Yeah, my character's interested in him. I got those gifts and stuff. Like, oh, you weren't bargaining buttering him up. You wanted to have a yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so at that point, I kind of sucked it in with like, oh, finding him dead would be really bad for this plot. And I went, okay, we're going to do a micro scene then that's going to happen literally just before the group shows up.
Sure.
And I want you to, I'm going to explain what you see, and then you're going to tell the players what the other characters they see when you show up. And they're like, oh, that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And so they all sat down, and he just scribbles out dead and writes missing bloodstains.
Oh, okay.
And so he read the whole thing about the room being sacked, like this person basically coming in with a bottle of wine and finding the room sacked and like everything tossed and clearly a scuffle and some bloodstains and like the important documents are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And the person, I said, so it's been 45 minutes. Where what does the group see as they come in?
Mm-hmm.
And the person turned and was just like, I'm on my knees sobbing and clutching his bed sheets that are covered in blood.
Uh-huh.
And the first thing out of one of the characters' mouths was, I'm investigating. Did someone die in this room?
Mm-hmm.
No. They were clearly taken.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, okay, we got to find him. And just one of the players was like, is his stuff here? And it was, you shut up. We need to find him now. And I was like, and the stuff doesn't matter anymore now.
Yep.
And it was like, that little thing, that little bit of communication changed the entire drive of the plot. And that player drove to find that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was like, I wanted to kill that NPC. And now I had my new MacGuffin.
Yeah.
I didn't need stuff. I had a MacGuffin.
This is such a gift when a player comes to you and goes, hey, here's an angle you probably weren't thinking of.
Yeah.
But your plot has engaged me in a way that you probably you don't know.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you about it, and I want to give you the opportunity to incorporate that into what's going on.
And he even wrote, he said, at first I was kind of offended because I had written a beautiful scene that was going to be impactful for the whole group, and I honestly didn't think they were going to take it. And I was kind of like, what? Like, now I have to, and then I just stopped and I hit, nope, need to reset my entire brain and go, what does this give me?
Mm-hmm.
Stuff is not important. The person is important. A person can be used. Okay, I've got it. And it took me 5 to 10 minutes to wash my brain and retry.
Yep.
And I think when you can do that, when you can take those pauses and communicate with your storyteller, and your storyteller is accepting, that's wonderful. I think you could do the same thing with other players. Mm-hmm. You can look at another player and say, hey, my character's really interested in exploring this part of their backstory a little bit more. Are you willing to go with me on this journey? And go with them. Mm-hmm. Explore that just a little bit.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to wrap up for the night?
Let's talk about our last show of 2022.
2022, episode 191.
God, we're almost at 200 episodes.
I know.
Which is not nearly as massive as going into our 4th year.
Jeez, oh Pete. We're so old.
We are ancient at this, and in content we are ancient. Like I've got so much engineering work that I'm going to have to do to get us caught up in other systems, and now there's a lot to talk about for the end year. And for those of you who haven't been with us year after year, our last session, our therapy session of the year on our podcast here is freeform. We usually don't have much of an outline. We have some things that we
jot
do
down
recaps
some notes
and stuff like that. But one of the things that we do is we open up our live chat to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got the time to join us for our next Wednesday, please come. Live chat will be open to all listeners, whether you're new or a contributor or a Patreon member. It doesn't matter. You guys can all be in the live chat and join us, and we would love to have you. We'd love to talk to you and have you be part of it. The more the merrier, without a doubt.
Absolutely. Come hang out with the other listeners and shoot us some questions like live on the air. As we say at the end of every episode, we stream live at mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave.
Yep.
And that's at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah,
listen to the show live, jump in the Discord, talk to everybody else in the live chat, shoot us some questions, whatnot. We'd love to hang out with you.
Thank you, Overwatch. This is the GIF got posted in chat of Titanic. It's been 4 years. I think it's supposed to be
it's been 84 years. It's
yeah,
the actual quote. Yeah, but blacked out the 8, so it's been 4 years.
It's true. But I will try and get the Mixlr link and some of our other links up there. But yeah, and honestly, we'd love to hear your feedback about how the last year went, how our 101s went, what you'd like to hear more of,
what your favorite show is. You know, what type of content you've enjoyed out of us, what type of content you haven't enjoyed out of us and would like to see less of. You know?
What things in the community we can add to.
Exactly.
You know, whether it's indie stuff, whether we need to lean into OSRs, whether we need to talk as we want to stick more to our narrative. That's what we do.
Yeah.
But obviously, we talk about systems all the time and how that mixes in with it.
Sure.
So
we had and I think I mentioned this earlier. We had a couple people join our Discord, basically just hi, I am here. I love the community and I love the show and everything like that. But I am here specifically to say you guys really need to look into the Cortex system. You guys really need to look into Blades in the Dark. Hit a couple of those. So, don't be shy. Drop in. Give us some suggestions, man. We have to chart out at least the next 6 months or something like that.
It's going to be a lot.
We could use your ideas. It's always painful trying to rack our brains for stuff like this. So, anyways, we're going to wrap up for the night. You can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave. Listen to us on Instagram at @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And once again, join us on our Discord. Our link is on our Twitter, for as long as that exists.
Yeah.
And our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members who help us out every single month, especially our name members, Knox in the Box, Sebjet, Sam, the Arcane Asylum, Sparkle Motion Veteran, Hulavu, and Sean. We really appreciate all your support. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/Arcane Anthems. Our intro music is Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. And our outro music, which you're hearing right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Mid-Air Machine. You can find that at freemusicarchive.org.
And big shout out as always to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for loving and supporting us. All of our friends who've sat at our tables over the years to give us these great stories to share with you. And you, every single one of our listeners. Merry Christmas, Happy Yule, Happy Hanukkah,
Happy
all that
Solstice.
jazz. And have a great night. We love every one of you.
Love you guys. Good night.
night.